In episode 36 of Mobycast, we look ahead to reInvent 2018 and discuss what to expect, as well as offer a few practical tips to get the most value. Welcome to Mobycast, a weekly conversation about containerization, Docker, and modern software deployment. Let's jump right in.
Welcome, Chris and Rich, to another episode of Mobycast.
Hi, John. Hi, Rich.
Hey.
Hey. So, Rich, let's hear what you've been up to this week.
Finishing up a district website, recreation district website. That's turned out pretty good. So I've been pretty much focused on that for the last 5 days or so.
That's super fun because you live over 2 hours away from me, but the website recreation district that you've been working on is for the one that I live in. So this is going to impact me. I'm excited.
Yeah. And I used to live there too. So it's not a far reach for me working on the project, but that's fun. It's coming to an end, and we're starting to get a couple, requests for, sometimes agencies will, I don't know, dilly-dally. And then the next thing you know, they have to get stuff done by the end of the year. They haven't started. And so we're starting to get a lot of those, oh my God, can you help us requests, which are nice because we can charge a lot. But at the same time, it's like, do I really want to run into the new year with that much stress? So I'm debating because I had a revenue goal that we might come up shy on. So if I do these extras, I'll definitely pass it. But to what,
Got to do it, Rich.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's funny. Chris, how about you? What have you been up to?
Just busy. Just kind of working on reorganizing my team to reduce some of my overhead. So introducing a new team member. Now have 3 different product teams for a particular client, and just getting that all slotted together and working. And that's been a multi-month project, and it seems like it's coming together. So pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
And also learning how to draw architecture diagrams, and studying for my next AWS certification exam, which I'm taking in a few days.
Fantastic. And I also am studying for a certification exam. I'll be taking my first one at reInvent, which is the topic of this show. So we're going to talk about AWS reInvent that's coming up at the end of November. And both Chris and I will be there, and we're both super excited to go. And, if you're listening to this, you may be going or you may not be. So I would say if you're going, you probably already are starting to put together a game plan, but maybe we'll have some information for you that could be useful. And if you're not going, then probably by the end of this, you'll have such bad FOMO that next year you're definitely going to go. Let's just jump right in. Let's just say quickly, Chris, give a quick overview. What is this thing? What's the point of it, and how big is it, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so as far as technical conferences go, this is one of the biggest ones out there. It's been going on now for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And last year was the first one that I actually went to. It's been on my list to go to this one, and finally did go last year for the first time. And I was definitely blown away by just the sheer size of it. So it was over 40,000 attendees. The content was spread over 3 separate venues there in Las Vegas along the Strip. And, that seems kind of reasonable, right? But the Vegas Strip, a couple blocks away is actually 45 minutes worth of walking. So at one end of the Strip was the Venetian. At the other one was MGM Grand. And then it had the Aria in between those two. And that's a 45-minute walk from one to the other. So very large scale, just tons of just material and content, just thousands of sessions to go to that are just packed in over a period of 5 days. So it really is kind of like drinking from the fire hose. They have introductory level content and all the way up to really advanced level content. So really something for everyone. And if you were into cloud computing, if you were into especially AWS, like this is the conference to go to just really learn. It's a great opportunity to learn about stuff, go deeper on stuff that you already know, and then also to be exposed to new things and other tangential areas.
As you were just talking about who maybe should go, and it's sort of like any customer of AWS that uses it, plus any AWS practitioner or developer. So companies that use, or people that get into AWS to make stuff in it. So that list, I think within a couple more years, might just be everybody in the planet. So basically, if you live on the planet, you probably are using AWS and would benefit from reInvent. I mean, the list is just, there's not anybody that couldn't benefit from going to it, I guess is what I'm saying. So I guess let's talk a little bit about what kind of stuff is there, what kind of talks are there, what kind of, like, how it's organized, how it's set up. Not geographically, not like, how many hotels and stuff, but like what are the things that they do? Is it going to rooms and listening to people speak? What kind of stuff is it?
Yeah, there are many different types of sessions and events that are going on, ranging from things like parties or after hours type stuff. There's the keynote sessions, which are pretty amazing and actually interesting, entertaining keynote sessions that they have. And then the actual technical content, which is kind of broadly, there's 4 different categories of that content. And so you have, the first one would be sessions. And so these are the lecture style, traditional breakout sessions where there's some topic, you have an expert, that 1 or 2 experts that have been, presenting that material lecture style. And then sometimes they will have, depending on how long the content goes, they may or may not have some time for some Q&A at the end. Usually it doesn't work out that way. Usually there's so much material that they end up taking almost the full 60 minutes, it feels like.
And Chris will probably attend a couple of those and then end up breaking them down in Mobycast, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And those range, they cover all topics at all levels. So there's, I think this year in the catalog, they break things out into spread over about 25 different topics, I think. Things like serverless and analytics and security and identity, databases, containers. So topics like that, there's probably at least 20, 25 topics. And
I was going to say, don't start reading that list. It was real.
Exactly. And then, different, ranging from 200 level all the way up to 400 level material. So those are sessions. That's definitely the meat and potatoes of the content. That's the bulk of what these sessions are. And then a second vehicle for the content are the chalk talks. And these are relatively new. I think they introduced these actually maybe last year. And what they are, definitely much smaller sessions. You have an AWS expert that gives basically a 10 to 15 minute talk about the particular topic. And then after that, the remaining 45 minutes or so are just spent doing Q&A with the audience and kind of getting up at a whiteboard and doing things real time. So very, very interactive. So if you have, if you're using AWS or, stuck on some sort of issue, or you want to know maybe there's a better way of doing it, like these are great sessions to go attend, because you can, ask those kinds of questions and brainstorm with experts. So in a way, it's kind of like, free expert level consulting engineering, right there on the spot. A third one they have workshops. So these are 2-hour workshops, sessions. So they're really just hands-on session. Bring your laptop. It'll be on a particular, objective for that workshop. The instructor will set it up with a 10 to 15 minute, overview. And then after that, you'll break off, into groups and, work on whatever it is that you're going to be building during that workshop. So maybe it's like you're going to set up a DynamoDB system with some tables and some keys and properties in there, and maybe wire up with some API gateway calls. So you actually have like an end-to-end kind of application running and, type thing. So those kinds of material.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to make it more clear, one of the examples I saw was building a translation. I forgot the name of it, but when you speak and then AWS transcribes your speech and then translates it to another language and then transmits it back out as spoken word. Like one of the ones was to build something that did that.
Right. Yeah.
That's an example of something you might build. It looked kind of fun. Oh yeah, you can build that in 2 hours. How cool.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So those are the workshops. Just realize those are basically double sessions. So they're 2 hours instead of the normal 60 minutes. And so something to take into account when you're building out your schedule in the catalog. And then the fourth one are these. This is a kind of, again, something that's a bit more new. They call them builder sessions, and these are really they're 1 hour long. They're kind of like a mini workshop. So you have small groups. I think they're up to like five attendees with one facilitator, and you have a short explanation again, or a demonstration of what it is you're going to build, and then you spend the rest of the time building that and getting that help along the way from the person that's facilitating that session. So 1 hour you build something pretty cool, and it's a much more intimate, smaller environment.
And so those types of sessions, you and I were talking about this earlier because I was trying to figure out what I should do, and you were telling me what you were going to do. And just, I think it really, your job role plays a big role in what you should do. So Chris is the VP of technology at Kelsys, and you make a lot of architectural decisions. You design a lot of software. You do a lot of AWS work yourself, make sure that things are set up the way they should be, and help people with setting things up. So you just need downright content. You need to know what's going on in AWS and know how to use it and be an expert at it. So I think you're going to probably end up going to a lot of sessions, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Because that's the most information per minute that you can get, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking for myself, some of those may make sense, especially if they're particularly interesting. But as somebody who's more sales and marketing focused, spending my entire AWS reInvent inside sessions is a great way for me to not be seen and not meet people. So I was thinking that for a lot of the things that I do, I should go to smaller things like Chalk Talks, or actually really Chalk Talks a lot, because that gives me a chance to meet people and interact with them in a group setting in a more natural way than walking around a conference floor and trying to strike up a conversation with a random person, which is always a little awkward. And in Chalk Talks, you can start to see, that person kind of knows their stuff, or that person has the type of problem that Kelsys is really good at solving. So I think I might try to get into some of those.
That's a great plan. We talked about this as well. I think the expo floor is a great place for that as well. That's one of the things we haven't mentioned yet. So as all technical conferences, there's an expo. Mm-hmm. So this is where you have hundreds of vendors offering Amazon add-ons or integrations or solutions or guidance on the show floor there with booths and just tons of information. And it's really interesting to me to, you can go speak to the vendors and find out more about what it is that they're doing and see whether or not that the problem that they're solving is kind of rings a bell or it's applicable to what you're doing. But it's also really interesting to hear, just kind of listening to what other people are asking as they come up to these vendors. Mm-hmm. It's a great just reference point of kind of understanding what are the other, the common problems that people are facing out there, and what are these common questions and whatnot. And sometimes what happens is you can actually end up answering the questions for them too. I don't think sometimes I don't think the vendors really appreciate that, but
and I would say, from my experience on expo floor type situations, if you're a VC or an entrepreneur, that is a good place to spend a lot of time, because there's no better insight into the market than looking at the market just all laid out there before your eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. The other thing that's kind of interesting about the expo floor at reInvent is that AWS itself, they give themselves a big footprint there, and it's called AWS Village. And this is where all the various teams of AWS will have their own booths, and they're all co-located there in that one area. And they bring the experts, they bring the pros. So these are the folks actually working on those. They're not limited to just marketing folks or support folks. These are the people doing that work. So if you have any deep, challenging questions about any kind of AWS product or service, that's a great place to hang out. It's also where again, the business people are going to be there as well. Just a really great resource.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm just thinking about my own self and going on into the AWS Village and essentially stalking down some of the AWS people that I follow on Twitter and meeting them in person. And I think that would probably be a great place to do that type of stuff.
Yeah, because, as you mentioned, like a lot of these topics are, these sessions are content that's delivered by AWS employees. And kind of what I've noticed is, a lot of them will just go hang out at the Village too, right? After doing your sessions and whatnot. So it's a great place to network and to, just listen to conversations and participate yourself.
Right. So I want to talk about the keynotes next. One of the only big keynotes I've ever seen in my life was delivered by the former CEO of Intel, Brian Krasnich, I think was his name. And before that keynote, I was just kind of joking around with a friend and talking with a friend that worked at Intel. And my friend was saying, yeah, Intel has a tendency to do vision casting and strategy by keynote, which was sort of like a what? And what he was saying to me is that sometimes the rest of Intel finds out what Intel's strategy is by going to the keynote and listening to it, and then, oh, I guess those are the commitments we're making to the world. And that, that's sort of a horrible thing to do as a company. And that particular CEO is no longer the CEO of Intel. But I assume that that's not what AWS does. I've never seen an Andy Jassy keynote, but maybe tell me what we might expect out of the keynotes.
Yeah, like I said, last year was the first year that I had gone to, and I was super impressed with both keynotes. So there are two keynote sessions. The first keynote, which is on the Wednesday of reInvent week, is done by Andy Jassy. That is it's a 2.5 hour long keynote session, which you're thinking, oh my goodness, that is that's a long keynote session. But the thing is that it certainly didn't feel long. It was just unbelievably jam packed with announcements. And I remember last year, they must have announced at least 20 major things during that one keynote session. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, each one of those announcements was the equivalent of a startup company, or a smaller company. This is what we've been working on all year, and this is this huge announcement, and we're going to go get a round of funding based on that, right? We're going to go raise $20 million on it.
Right, yeah, not a startup company with a seed round, but a Series B startup company,
sure.
Serious.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's they did 20 of those, and it's almost nonchalant. Oh, by the way, we just did this, and oh, we did this, and so it's just really impressive on what it is that they are announcing and releasing during that session. Also, just Andy just did a really good job of just painting the whole picture and the business environment, kind of what their goals are, what their mission is, the vision, and it's one of those things where it's hard not to get wrapped up into it and just really feel the energy and the excitement of just being. So there is a lot to be said of just being there in person, experiencing it, hearing it, and you're wow, these are folks. They are not sitting on their laurels. They are pushing full steam ahead.
You talk about the vision, and we have done sort of an AWS falling over under its own weight because they're just into everything episode before. And I was like, what vision could you possibly have aside from, if there's a computer out there processing some information, we want that to be an AWS computer. That feels like that's what the vision is. Process all the things.
Sure. It goes back. Microsoft, a computer on every desk, right? So and running Microsoft software. And this is this is the same thing, right? It's just they want it, touching AWS software and infrastructure and services. So it's just, there's a lot more computers now. And it continues to grow, right? So it's the market share is just expanding at a much faster rate. And just technology is just reaching its tentacles out into so many areas and so many different niches and businesses. So, lots of possibilities for them to go into. So the keynote is just it's really cool and interesting to see that and to get that perspective kind of like at the higher level. And I'm sure there is a little, I mean, it's kind of hard, like for a company as big as Amazon is now, and for as much stuff that they have going on, for everyone to be on the same page. So I'm sure there are, folks that work at Amazon that, they're like, oh wow, I didn't know that's what the AI ML stuff, what they're doing over there in that team.
Hey, this is Rich. Please pardon this quick interruption. We recently passed an internal milestone of 10,000 listens, and I wanted to take a moment to thank you for the support. I was also hoping to encourage you to head on over to iTunes and leave us a review or a rating. Positive feedback and constructive criticism are both incredibly important to us. So give us an idea of how we're doing, and we'll promise to keep publishing new episodes every week. All right, let's dive back in.
Yeah. I realized what I said may have been a bit confusing. I wanted to say that strategy by keynote literally means you aren't even sure if you're going to be able to meet the commitments that you're making during a keynote. So you're painting a grand vision and then kind of not living up to it. That is sort of the problem in Intel running. Right. Yeah. I don't think AWS does not have that problem.
No, I'm pretty sure they have. I mean, just look with many companies, they have roadmaps, and they have general outlines for like what they want to do over the next year and the next 3 years and 5 years and whatnot. Of course, everything is changing so rapidly. Like that's got to be pretty flexible. They are very well known for their small teams. They're 2 pizza teams, and really are they're kind of organized and autonomous, and they are known for just throwing resources at something, and it may or may not turn out to be something that's actually has a return, right? So, and they're not afraid of that.
You know what I just realized? I was thinking about what could AWS do that that they just really haven't conquered yet. What area can they get into that's big and it's part of the computer industry, and they don't have a good solution there yet. And I just was like, wait a minute, Rich is sitting right here with us, and Rich is on WordPress, and so is 2/3 of the internet. And AWS does not have a content management system that I know of, and if they do, it's not very popular. It's just sort of interesting to me that that's not an area that they've put any effort into. And that's not to say that all the WordPress sites out there in the world, like probably 2/3 of those are running on AWS in one way or another via third-party hosting that itself is running on AWS or directly on AWS. But it's just kind of interesting. Like they've gotten into developer tools and some of the other things that touch actual practitioners, but they haven't tried to kill WordPress.
They need to, hire some UX designers before they can build a CMS.
No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. You can just imagine what the UI would look like for their CMS.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be it. I mean, it could just be that CMS gets too far into stuff that has to look nice and have UX that is laudable, and that that is not their focus and has not ever been.
Do you remember when Google refused to load a style sheet because they didn't want to slow things down? Like they came around too.
Okay.
So it's, now Google Docs has, one of the biggest style sheets. So I think that, eventually they're going to have to go into that realm.
Yeah, maybe we'll hear about that at this reInvent. Maybe it's time. Maybe they're like, okay, WordPress is looking a little bit vulnerable because they're running on pretty old software. Could be that they decide now's the time.
God, I hope not. I don't want to be a coal miner that quick.
That's funny.
I'll take the contrarian view. Like, I don't see that happening just because I think they're just fine with WordPress running on AWS infrastructure, and the app itself, like, it's so entrenched, and there's not a lot of business value there for them and revenue perhaps to extract for it. Instead, they'll go after things like prescription medicine, healthcare, right? Disrupting the retail marketplace.
I think that's a great point. Like, thinking of it from a business perspective, the parts of the WordPress ecosystem that don't happen on AWS already it's marginal. It's like they've already got the data. The databases are inside AWS already. The processing has already happened inside of AWS. So the only stuff that's left is just the software that people don't even pay for. So
yeah.
Interesting. All right, so let's talk about some practical tips.
Yeah, maybe before we move on, just that was the
right, yes,
there's Andy Jassy keynote, and then the second day on Thursday is when Werner Vogels gives his keynote, and he's the CTO for AWS. So definitely a different. This seems really typical in a lot of these conferences, right? You have the first keynote is done with more like from the business guy, and then the second one is more the technical one. And so Werner gives more of the technical keynote, kind of painting the strategy, the vision, like what does the future look like? Where are they going? And, this one, definitely not going to do a lot, as many of announcements or whatnot, but but it does paint paint an interesting picture. He's a very interesting and entertaining speaker. Like he's really into it. It kind of felt, a little bit like watching Steve Ballmer sometimes. And just because of Werner is bald. He's very passionate. But he was under the hot lights up there on stage by himself, and just he did a great job. It was really it was entertaining. Some interesting things to think about that he brought up. So definitely enjoyed it and would recommend folks to go see it.
This is where I see it going. And you can disagree, but here's my loosely held strong opinion. So we talk a lot on this podcast about all the things you need to know in order to do a good job deploying production workloads and deploying distributed services. And there are so many things, and really it is important to know all those things and be able to be fluent with them, because every problem is different, every company is different, and your business. The thing that works for business A might not be the best for business B. So really understanding all those things is super, super important. But it's getting too hard. And guess what? AI is coming along. And serverless computing is like the biggest thing that AWS has done recently. And it's just like this rocket ship that's just taking off. And we've talked on Mobycast about how, if you really got important workloads and you really are already an expert in doing this stuff, keep doing it with the existing tools and don't go to serverless just yet. But where I see this going is that eventually things get too hard. There's too many decision points. It's just best leaving all that stuff to the machines. Let the machines figure out how they should balance workloads, how they should scale up and scale down. Let the machines figure out what should be on more available stuff, what should be on higher redundancy stuff, what should be on more expensive stuff, less expensive stuff. Let them sort that all out with AI. And I think that's probably the mantra. I can't imagine that it's not. Make that more and more and more powerful to the point where super experts finally push back from their desk and say, God, I can't be the expert anymore. The computers are going to have to take over for me.
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. I just I don't see it happening anytime in the next 25 years or so.
You're so wrong. But we're going to put a Mobycast bet right now. I say it happens in the next 10 years.
Okay, I will take that bet for sure. I will definitely take that bet. Mostly it's not because necessarily the technology wouldn't be there. It's actually the people. All this stuff requires people and process change. Mm-hmm. And people just aren't going to change that quickly. It's actually one of the problems with serverless. It sounds great. Okay, I don't have to manage infrastructure anymore. I don't really have to worry about ops. And I can let someone else do it. But it does require kind of a lot of people change and process change and just the way you develop software. And that's a huge barrier.
For sure.
Lambda's been out since, it'll be 4 years now. Yep. And how much of people's workloads actually is run on Lambda, and it's just a small fraction.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we'll check back in 2028.
Set your alarms.
Right on. Okay. So, let's just spend a couple more minutes just talking about practical stuff. I know we also wanted to talk about what we're excited to see, but I think we maybe only have time to talk about some practical tips and move on from there.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, definitely one of the things to consider is just that the session catalog is it's massive, right? There's over 2,000 sessions over these 5 days. And it's a logistical nightmare, because again, these sessions are spread over 5 different venues. They actually have 2 staggered schedule sessions. So not every session is on the same, they're overlapping too, right? So you have that. So you have these 2 like overlapping schedules that are going on. It's really it can be kind of challenging, right? To pick out your sessions that you want to go to. And then you also have the issue of, lots of people are here. They do offer reserved, registration for these sessions. But
is there an aftermarket for that reserve stuff? Because I swear it's like scalpers like took it all up within minutes.
Yeah. Well, what they do is, I believe they allow up to 75% of the capacity to be reserved, and then they leave 25% open for waitlist and walk-ins.
Right.
And a lot of these sessions they may accommodate somewhere between 200 to 300 to 1,000 people, depending on what room they're in. And when you have over 40,000 people attending, doesn't take long for to get like 300 people to say, yeah, I want to reserve for that session, and then it gets filled up. So I think it turns out like it's don't stress out if you can't reserve the sessions that you want to go to, that if you have to wait list for them. For me last year, I actually didn't realize just how big AWS is and kind of like what a circus it can be. And I didn't do the pre-registration. So when I came on site, I was basically just looking at the agenda the night before, and kind of planning out like what I wanted to do. And so for almost all the sessions, I was waitlisting or just walking in on them. And I think probably a good 80% of those sessions I was able to get into.
They hear that they're limiting the queuing time to something like 30 minutes or an hour or something.
They suggest you line up for the wait list like 30 minutes before the session, and then if you're reserved, if you're not there within 5 minutes of the start time, you lose it.
Right. So the new thing this year is that they were having people kind of camping out for ones that are really popular, and they wanted to prevent the camp out. So now they're going to start telling people they're not allowed to line up. And I think it's 30 minutes. If you're there more than 30 minutes before a session starts and you're wanting to wait in line, they'll tell you to go away. Which I think is going to create, for a few sessions, it's going to create this weird, like people kind of milling about, looking around, like right around the area, and then like a mad stampede to get in line right at 30 minutes before the thing starts.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's something you have to experience for yourself, because it is kind of crazy when you're there on site, like, because a lot of these, they're in these narrowish hallways that you have like rooms on either side of the hallway, right? And so you have like these queuing areas for each one of these sessions. Meanwhile, sessions are going on, in those rooms, right? So there's only so much room there for people, and so and usually there's not enough room for the wait list, and so it has to snake around, and like you don't even know what line you're in. But just trust in the cosmos that everything does kind of, it really does kind of miraculously work out. Everyone is not happy though. Like you're just people are just grumbling and griping and, just thinking, oh, this is just terrible. And it actually works out okay. So just, have some patience. And again, just book, just definitely do some research on the agenda. kind of figure out like where you want to be, like physically, like try to limit yourself to a venue for a few hours or maybe even all day. It's going to make your life a lot easier than if you're trying to like zigzag back and forth between like MGM and Venetian. That's just not going to happen. You're going to end up just collapsing, or you're going to end up like just hanging out with Elmo there by the Bartell drugs or something like that, and just in a stupor. So,
you know what they could use to do a little bit of crowd management is Disney theme parks. Really make it more pleasant for people waiting in line.
Yeah, if they had they don't have the real. It's really just it's a real estate thing, and obviously you can't. Having enough like stanchions and chain to actually keep it orderly, they just don't have the real estate or the facilities to do that. Like it's some of these you kind of like scratch your head. It's like, really, like we're going to get 5,000 people into this. This seems like this place was not designed for that. Like it kind of feels like a lot of these, like they're really designed for like 1,000 people. And then you try to get 5,000 people in there and it's just like, this doesn't feel right. And a lot of the, they're multi-level, so you'll be on the escalators that are going between levels and you look down and it's like this sea of just a mass of people, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going down into that.
Right. So
somewhere.
I have another practical question that is a real honest question. I have been meaning to ask you this, and so here we go. So just talking about what to wear. Most of the time I'm planning on being able to be fairly comfortable, but as you know, I may want to and need to interact with sort of executive level people while I'm there, particularly executive level people that work at enterprises. So I was thinking, maybe you should bring a blazer, but I also know it's going to be hot, and I don't really love walking from place to place when it's hot in Las Vegas, especially wearing a blazer. So just was wondering what your take is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too terribly hot that time of year. So, okay. I mean, I know myself, I think I was always wearing like a light sweater. I almost always also had a hoodie that I would, in case, especially in the session rooms themselves, like those are usually pretty well air conditioned and they get chillier. But
if I'm going to I'll probably wear a hoodie because that's my comfort zone. But yeah, when I'm maybe doing some stuff that might have me interacting with executives is when I was thinking of having the blazer available. But you could tell me right now, dude, I never saw anybody in blazers, and then I'd be like, oh, then I won't bring one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's you have all sorts of folks there, right? So you have folks like they wouldn't even dream of going out without wearing a blazer and a white shirt, right? So like there's tons of that going on. For the most part, like this is a technical conference, so by and large, it's the t-shirts, jeans, sneakers, is the uniform.
Cool.
Of the day. But yeah, temperature wise, that time of year, I remember it was actually a little bit chillier than I thought it would be. I think I remember it being like more along somewhere between 55 and maybe 70 degrees.
Okay, that's great.
So, it was one of those things where it was like, oh, it's not quite hot enough to like, just, like, not that you would hang out by the pool, but definitely it was not pool weather.
Okay, good to know. Well, cool. Anything else we should discuss here?
Yeah, maybe some other tips is just like definitely I would suggest don't miss the keynotes, especially if you've never done that before. Like they are very entertaining, they're inspirational, and definitely worth going to. Especially if you can visit it in person. So they do have obviously 40,000 plus folks. You can't fit them all into one place, really. So they do stream it to other locations. And so like last year, one of them was at the Venetian and one was at MGM Grand. And so I was actually staying at the MGM Grand. So I saw one in person, and then I stayed there for on the other day just to watch the live stream. And the live stream it's pretty good, but being in person was even better and more enjoyable. So if we can,
right, and I'm planning on watching the keynotes with you, and going to replay with you, and then largely kind of doing our own thing the rest of the time.
Yeah, cool. And then certification exams, they have all week. You can take them there on site. And it is.
Is there any advantage to that? I've signed up to take one because it's just, might as well get it over with. But is there any advantage to doing it on site as opposed to not?
Well, I mean, convenience for sure is there. It's like it's right there, and might as well. You do. I think you get more.
You get your score sooner, or you find out you passed like right there.
No, I mean you do that regardless of where you take it. Okay. So that's not too different. I mean, it is run by the same company that's administering the test, but they do have.
Did they like slap that on your badge? Like, did they slap a little sticker on your badge, like AWS certified? Like, so you walk around with that, and you're like, dude, I'm stoked.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, but the thing is like you look around, it's like there's a lot of people there with certification stickers on their badges.
Well, so then if you're walking around with that one, then you're like, oh man, maybe I better go get certified.
Yeah, there's with that one, yeah, for sure. And you'll need that to get into the certification lounges, which they can be nice. They have a few of these spread out over the various venues, and sometimes it's a nice place to take a break. So if you are certified and if you do have that sticker on your badge, you can duck in there and play some arcade games or get some cookies, some snacks, get a Coke or whatnot.
Well, I'm scheduled for 8 a.m. Monday, so the whole rest of the conference will be easy street for me.
Okay, yeah, that's good to get it done early and out of the way.
Yeah,
They do have, the AWS employees are there as well. So I think that's kind of one of the more benefits of doing this here. So like when I took this exam, I took an exam last year at reInvent and passed it. And they were asking for volunteers to be in their SME program. And so I was like, yeah, sure, sign me up. And it was because of that I then got invited to participate in the exam topic writing workshop. And so that's something you definitely won't get if you just walk into one of the testing centers, that are spread out across any other location. So that's
sure. Definitely a whole episode on your experience with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and it's just kind of fun just to do it there, right? It's a lot more exciting. Like when you're taking the exam offsite, throughout the rest of the year, you're just going to some testing center where people they're doing every kind of exam under the sun, right?
Yeah, they're doing the GRE or the LSAT or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Versus here, it's just everyone is taking, an AWS certification exam. So there's definitely a bit more energy and, it's definitely a funner environment to do it. So I would, if you're thinking about taking it, definitely do it there, and then bring good shoes because you're going to walk a lot.
Right on, will do.
Yeah, your Fitbit will be happy with you.
So I think we should wrap it up there. We went a little longer than usual, but maybe that'll help tide you over, dear listener, because we're going to take the week of Thanksgiving and the week of reInvent off, and we'll be back December 5th, which is the Wednesday after reInvent. So we'll miss you. But if you're gonna be at reInvent and you're listening to me now, I would love to meet you. So send us a note and we can say hi. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Chris.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, dear listener, you made it to the end. We appreciate your time and invite you to continue the conversation with us online. This episode, along with show notes and other valuable resources, is available at mobycast.fm/36. If you have any questions or additional insights, we encourage you to leave us a comment there. Thank you, and we'll see you again in a few weeks.